They certainly raise concerns about something that I've opposed to the best of my knowledge and ability, reading through pieces of legislation at every turn and every vote to oppose the whole notion of hate speech, hate crimes, thought police, thought crimes, putting the government into your head and your motivations when you're engaged in criminal behavior. Criminal behavior is criminal behavior. Violating people's civil rights is violating people's civil rights. But when we want to insert the government into what you're thinking and what motivates you, you are empowering that which should never be empowered. The ability of the government to police thought, to police speech, to police your views. Not the views that carry out then the actions. The actions are the problem. Police the actions. But yet that's what we did. And I am damned proud of my colleagues, particularly on this side of the aisle, who stood up and said no. Because it was a hard vote. Because you know what I got to spend my time tonight and tomorrow and this week doing? Explaining to my Jewish constituents and supporters and friends that I stand with them unequivocally. And they'll say, what do you mean unequivocally? You voted against a bill that's entitled antisemitism. And I'll say, because the slippery slope of tyranny that have led to the death, that have led to the harassment, that have led to the abject discrimination and oppression of people around this world, those roads lead through the empowerment of government bureaucrats and the expense of liberty. And liberty stops at the door of harming somebody, taking their stuff, blocking roads, doing the kinds of things that actually directly impact and harm people, not what you think. But that's what we do. We do things for political motivations. And the Republican leadership knew it. And they put it on the floor anyway. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of my Republican colleagues who want to go out and campaign for power, to maintain power, to then come in here and do the very things we said we oppose. There's a bill in the House Judiciary Committee right now. That bill will say that the Department of Justice can go into a state and prosecute a cop killer if the local jurisdiction effectively refuses to do that. Now, that sounds good, doesn't it? If you're pro-cop, if you're pro-police, and you've got a George Soros prosecutor sitting in Austin, Texas, New York City, that is refusing to do their job, their duty, follow their conscience, to go prosecute a dangerous individual who killed a cop. So you say, well, Chip, of course, we should bring in the Department of Justice and take care of that horrific result. Here's the problem. There's no end. The bill is based upon commerce. If a gun transports in commerce, if the defendant has traveled in commerce. Now, you say, Chip, why does that matter? Because let me ask you a question. The bill that I have before the Judiciary Committee, which is saying that if something is involved in commerce, the federal government, the Department of Justice, whether it's led by a Republican or led by Merrick Garland, that Department of Justice can come in based on whatever rationale they want and say, we're going to prosecute this crime committed against a cop. Why not against a nurse? Why not against a doctor? Why not a firefighter? Why not a teacher? Why not a member of the clergy? It won't end. Our founders didn't set up a federal police. Our Constitution does not contemplate a federal police. Our government, our federal government, is not supposed to police us in our homes and our communities. It is egregious that there are cops who have been murdered and there are DAs that refuse to do their duty to prosecute their killers. But I'll be damned if I'm going to empower a government to extend beyond its constitutional limits using the same bastardized use of the Commerce Clause that we have decried for decades because it has expanded a government that is now tyrannically using its power to go after the American people, go after former politicians, including the former president, that is spending money we don't have, that is using that power to regulate us to death on virtually every bill that virtually every Republican on this side of the aisle that claims to be a limited government conservative votes for. Why? Because they don't want the Fraternal Order of Police or other law enforcement organizations to come after them. Well, last night, I didn't even have an amendment circulated yet. I simply begged the question, why are we putting forward a bill that expands the power of the Department of Justice under the Commerce Clause, no matter how meritorious our goal is of assuring cop killers go to jail? Why are we doing that? Aren't we limited government conservatives who don't believe in the expansive use of the Commerce Clause to expand the power of the federal government? Because it's used for thousands of other things that we don't like. I hadn't even gotten the ink dry on the concept of an amendment when someone in this body had already notified police organizations and said, go after him. Well, you know what? Go ahead. I work for 750,000 Texans. I respond to them, to God, and the Constitution of the United States. I do not work for anybody in this chamber. I do not work for any organization. I don't work for any donor. I work for the people. And I work for a people who are sick and damn tired of this institution run by a bunch of people who campaign saying one thing and they get here and do another. $34.5 trillion of debt. $1 trillion every 3 months. We already spend more on interest than our defense. We're about to crack $1 trillion of interest. They say we will hit $2 to $3 trillion of interest by 2030. Our borders are wide open. We have kids dying. We had Austin, Texas. 4 more people the other night died from fentanyl poisoning. A bunch of others had to be resuscitated with Narcan. The people of Texas are continuing to deal with thousands of people pouring across the border. It's not in the headlines right now because universities are in the headlines. But everybody in Texas who are reeling from inflation, who can't afford a car, who can't afford their home, who can't afford the interest on their mortgage, who can't afford to buy groceries, who are dealing with crime on their streets, who are dealing with open borders, they all want some sort of sanity coming out of this institution. And what do? What do Republicans do in all of their infinite wisdom? We fund more of it. We fund the Department of Homeland Security again. We give the FBI a brand new $200 million headquarters. You can't even make this stuff up. We give more power to the intelligence community to spy on Americans. Don't even protect Americans with warrants. You can't even make it up. Over the last 16 months, there has been a battle which represents the larger war brewing within the Republican Party because unfortunately my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are so far gone down the rabbit hole of radical, progressive policies that absolutely destroy our country every single day, littering our country with regulations, littering our country with all sorts of crime, littering our country with open borders, engaging in endless wars, all of the stuff that is happening because our Democratic colleagues are frankly undermining the American dream and undermining Western civilization and undermining everything we hold dear. There's been a battle going on for the soul of the party in the country within the Republican Party. And I want to tell you, I'm not in the majority. I'm not. You say, Chip, you're in the majority in the House. You get a razor-thin majority. No, I'm not. I'm not in the majority. I'm in the minority. A minority of Republicans who try to wake up here and change this place rather than just campaign on it. That's the truth.